Hi, I'd just like to welcome everybody here this morning and say a huge thank you for coming. I've got a few housekeeping things before we start. We're not expecting the fire alarm to go off, so if it does, we have exit there at the back and out these doors here, and I'm sure your teachers will escort you out. The toilets, if you don't already know, are out of reception, the 2 wooden doors, they're just through there as well. In terms of this event, this is the second year we've done it, and we were so impressed last year that there was no question that we wouldn't do it again. And this year we had 156 questions answered. So if you're asking a question today, it's been a long process to get it down to those few questions. It was amazing the quality of the questions we had with, and the huge range of subjects. This is probably the only time when you'll get told, sorry teachers, but you are allowed to use your phones in this to tweet only. So we've got our tweet wall there, so it's #MTYPQT. So please feel free to tweet through the day. We'll retweet off the council's account, and then we have our own participation in your mail account as well, so we'll be retweeting those throughout the day as well. You should have, when you come in, all seen these leaflets. If you're 16 years old, you can actually register yourself to vote now, and in fact you have to register yourself. So a few years ago your parents were able to do it for you. Now, if you want to be able to vote when you're 18, you have to be able to do it, you have to do it yourself, and please don't wait until you get to an election to do it. So if you get on now and do it as soon as you can, so everybody's got a leaflet there. The other thing we wanted to say is that if this is a young person's event, so again, sorry for the teachers, but this isn't for the teachers to kind of get involved as well. This is solely your event. So, you know, we're really pleased that in Local Democracy Week, we've got a whole week of events for young people, so this is kick-started. We are live streaming the event as well, so all schools have been sent the link, so we have a channel on YouTube. So this will be going out, so we really hope that your schools are watching it back in school as well. In regards to the people who are asking questions, if you could just wait until the staff get to you with the mic so that everyone can hear you nice and loud and clearly. Okay? So I think that's all. So if I can hand over to Adrian, who's going to chair our event this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being so patient and sitting for such a long time already. Now it's going to get interesting, hopefully. My name is Adrian Pitches. I work for Syria North. I'm the chairman of this event, which is sort of based on the TV question time thing that I'm seeing on a Thursday night. The panel from your left to right are Councillor Gary Bell, who's a Labour councillor who represents Killingworth Ward. Then we have David Rose, who chairs the North Tyneside Business Forum. And we've got Dean Titterton, who is the Chief Exec of YMCA on North Tyneside. Councillor David Lilly, who's a Conservative councillor for Tynemouth Ward. Norma Redfearn, I'm sure you'll know, is elected Mayor of North Tyneside. We've seen her in the Bay Guardian often, I think. Next to her is Rachel Nicholson, who's the Public Health Programme Manager here in North Tyneside. And then at the end, Sergeant David Foy from Northumbria Police, who works in the Whitley Bay neighbourhood team. And the first question we have today comes from Rihanna Sowerby, Year 10 at Churchill Community College. So the mic is coming your way.
How would you ensure that a robust support network is in place to cope with the growing numbers of young people experiencing mental health issues?
I'll just repeat Rihanna's question, and now that I've learned how to use the microphone. How would you ensure that a robust support network is in place to cope with the growing number of young people experiencing mental health issues? I'm going to ask Norma Redfearn first.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. I want to compliment you all on the quality of the questions. They're absolutely amazing. And I just want to say I'm delighted that people, young people like yourself, are involved in what really matters to you and having this conversation with us today. So thank you very, very much. Thank you, Rihanna, for that question, because it just highlights a number of pleas that have happened to many parents and residents and young people in the borough about the lack of support they've had regarding the mental health issues. I think there has been some service there for some time, but what we realised when the Public Service Department did the mental health needs assessment we found out that there had been an increase in admittance to hospital of young people between the ages of 10 and 24, self-harming. That came as quite a shock to me, to be quite honest. And when we looked at the figures, that was above the average of the national average across the country. So, as I am the mayor of North Tyneside, I can appoint people to do various things. I have a cabinet of 9 people who help me, and I appointed one of our councillors, Councillor Leslie Spillard, to be cabinet member for public health, and she is the chair of health and wellbeing. And I asked her when she began in May to take on this role to develop a mental health strategy for North Tyneside, and it was much needed. Not to say that there weren't things going on in the borough, there were, but they're very, very, well, all over the place. They weren't brought together to work together to give a better service. And there was a great need, I think, and there's a big barrier between schools and officers, parents and officers, and professionals who can help that. So I think there's been a lot going on, and a lot of consultation going on, and in particular I'm delighted that our youth council brought it to our attention, that they were very concerned about this issue. So the way forward, as far as we're concerned with this strategy, and I'm sure that Ruth will tell you a little bit more, is that I was concerned about when things are identified in school, and teachers, you know, with people a lot of the time, they recognise things. Where do they go? Where do they know how to get to talk to these young people? So we're trying to get professionals and others to work more closely with schools, to give that support system within our schools, to give all teachers some kind of insight and training into what they can do to help our young people that way, and at the same time work with our families. So I think you're right to raise that, Rihanna. It really is an important issue, and I know we're trying to do our best, but what I would say to you, particularly the youth council, as things begin to change, because we have recognised this and things start to happen in a different way, I just hope that the young people continue to monitor this and tell us whether things are improving for yourselves or whether they're not. Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Norma. And now David Foy.
Ariana, thanks for that question. And I take it from the way you framed the question, you're talking about the growing number. And that's interesting. It's a question of, actually, is it a growing number, or is it actually about recognition and people being more willing to talk about issues around mental health? I think that's got to be an underlying issue there. I mean, research by the Mental Health Charity Mind indicates that mental health issues might actually affect between 1 in 10 children in some way during their lives. And that's why I particularly chosen to go to schools in the North East, talk about issues around mental health, getting in there, getting rid of some of the mystique and some of the issues around talking about mental health. And I also noticed, as alluded, that North Tyneside Youth Council have made mental health provision a campaign priority. So that's great that at your age you're actually now beginning to talk about these issues, because it means they'll be demystified, and it makes great hope for the future in dealing with the issues of mental health. Because once they're recognised, then they can be dealt with. So, come to the question, how does Northumberland Police, because I'm here in uniform, obviously, Northumberland Police, so how do we contribute to a robust support network? Well, you can come into contact with the police in many ways, some of them negative, some of them positive. I'll look at the negative side first, and perhaps you might come into contact with the police as a result of an incident, which may ultimately lead to arrest or going into the criminal justice system. What happens there if someone's got issues? And indeed, people who come into contact with the police in those sorts of circumstances often do have issues, because there's issues around alcohol, substance abuse, which either can be a symptom or a cause of other issues in an individual's life. So if you come into contact with the police, it might be because things are beginning to go wrong. So if you have the misfortune to be arrested, for example, care starts from the moment that police officer makes contact with you. Okay? It's not about the investigation, it's not about how it goes on you know, when you see on the television, and so not all high drama. Police officer, once they arrest you or take charge of you in any way, are looking after your welfare. Now, if you have the misfortune to go into custody, having been arrested, an officer from the point at which they make contact with you will be observing you. Is this individual affected by drugs, alcohol, legal highs, or mental health issues? And they'll report that to the police sergeant at the time, who will make a record and ask you other questions about your welfare. So from that immediate point, before anything else is considered, your welfare is the priority. And from that, if there are issues recognised, you might have perhaps mental health issues which might have been the cause of your behaviour that led to your arrest, then you would probably see a doctor. And then from that, you could then be referred on to what we call our youth offending teams. And these are the multidisciplinary teams who will look at you as an individual and try and assess your needs and meet those needs accordingly to stop you getting involved in what we call the criminal justice process. It's about diversion. It's not about punishment, it's about diversion at an early stage when people get involved with the police and the criminal justice system. Seeing what's gone wrong, trying to put it right. And mental health as well as substance abuse are often an issue around that. So there are very robust systems in place within the police at an early stage to recognise these issues and to deal with them. Now, if we go outside the criminal justice system, then we do come into contact with youths a lot. Sometimes it's street drinking, in which case we would not necessarily take you into custody, we would take you home. It's your welfare. Operation Child Safe, something we've running with there for a long time. It's about taking kids home, letting their parents know, and looking after the welfare of the individual who might be vulnerable. But then we made referral onto N2L, never too late, who can offer some counselling around issues. Okay, so that's another area where we recognise the needs of mental health of an individual. And another project which is just starting with North Tyneside is where we've got a multidisciplinary team of police officers and mental health workers and professionals in the area who actually respond to incidents where the individual might have mental health issues, and it's dealt with then and there at the time. Rather than taking someone somewhere else, such as a hospital or a police station, bring the mental health workers and the police to the individual, try and recognise the needs at that stage, and make sure they get the right treatment and the correct referral at that time. Okay? So, as I appreciate there might still be room for improvement, I can reassure you we do recognise the importance of mental health, and I hope we've got systems in place to try and deal with them effectively, not just by ourselves, but with our partner agencies, so you get the best possible service and your needs are met.
Thank you, David, very much. Rachel.
Okay, I think I've really comprehensive answers. Just to add from a public health perspective, while the Mayor's right that the levels of self-harm in North Tyneside were higher than England, when we looked at some of the other indicators around mental health, it was reassuring to know that actually mental health of young people in North Tyneside is good, and a lot of people have really good mental health. So from a public health perspective, what we're interested in is really preventing mental health problems arising in the first place. So I know that most of you will know that you're recommended to eat 5 fruit and veg a day for your physical health, but I wonder, don't know if we could just have a quick show of hands, who's heard of the 5 ways to well-being? Yeah, a few people, that's great. So just like you can look after your physical health, there are things that you can do to look after your mental health. And those 5 things are things that happen probably in schools and in communities, but they're connecting. So having good relationships, talking to your family and friends is really important. Keep learning is really important for your mental health. I know that you all learn in school every day, but there are things that you can do for fun. Keep reading, teach yourself something new. Be active. So, I mean, this is for physical health and mental health, but maybe don't take that lift to school, don't take the bus, maybe walk if you're able. Take notice, so when you're walking to school, maybe don't be on your phone, have a look around and take notice of the surroundings. We've got great natural environment in North Tyneside. And the last one is give, so be kind to others, and a lot of evidence shows that if you're doing things for other people, this is really good for your mental health. So preventing mental health issues is really a key priority, and I know that the Mayor's already said about some of the great work that young people are already doing, so I know that lesson plans have been done by local young people around how we can prevent and protect our mental health. And also, as the Mayor said, we're doing a lot of work on the back of the needs assessment around improving services for mental health for young people. And over the coming months, we will be getting young people's input and consultation again into the service improvements. So that will be your opportunity again to say what improvements you think we need. So hopefully this should mean that in the future we will have an even better support network of services and organisations for people, those people that are experiencing mental health problems. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Pam. Brianna, did that answer your question? You look happy there, that's good. Okay, question 2. This comes from Ollie Chaplin. Ollie Chaplin is a Year 8 pupil from Valley Gardens Middle School.
There's been an article on the news recently called "Will a Robot Take Your Job?" Will this affect the job that I want in the future?
So Ollie's asking about, will a robot take my job? And we'll throw that over to David Rose. What do you think, David?
Well, Ollie, first perhaps a little background. There are already more than 1 million robots in the world. Mostly they're in manufacturing, and about 80% of those are making motor cars. They are only useful though where automation is worthwhile, with big volume and very little changes in the actual production processes. Until recently, they were very expensive, but as more and more are designed and made, the prices have come down, and so we can see an increase in robots throughout the world. Robots are actually to make human workers more efficient, not to replace them. It's similar to a joiner using, for example, an electric screwdriver instead of a manual screwdriver. When manufacturing moved to China, which is now considered the factory for the world, because it was easier to use humans to do all these jobs than to make automation itself work. For smaller manufacturers, a new generation of robots could bring more business and lead, in fact, to more jobs. This will move the balance of low-cost labour from China back to work in Europe. Robots do simple tasks and are working alongside a person to make things quicker. A robot can do the work that requires dexterity and precision, which people cannot do regularly and repeatedly. What is happening is there are a team of now collaborative robots working hand in hand with their human colleagues. Tasks that require decision-making, creativity, require human beings. The robots can do the grudge jobs to increase productivity. You needn't worry about your jobs in the future. Robots will have no use in the service industries such as retailing, banking, the law, and the services like the police, the fire service, and hospitals. Perhaps with the right education and qualifications, any of you could be designing robots in the future yourselves.
Thank you, David. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Ollie, I think robots will enhance your work-life skills and hopefully give you a better lifestyle, because computers are enabling the business community to flourish, especially manufacturing, as David has said. I've got lots of factories in the borough, as my role as chair of the council, and I went to a premises called Elfab, which is not so far from here, just at the back of us, which exports valves to all over the world, especially China, and they've won the Queen's Award for that. And at their factory they've got robots and lasers, but as David said, someone has to manufacture them, and some of the machines are manufactured at the Team Valley, so very close to here. And also it gives productivity, it's much more increased productivity and profits for the company, and the workers are benefiting from that. So the message is really, if you're looking for a career, maybe design a computer, someone's got to program it, and someone's definitely going to have to maintain it. And also, through talking to businesses and other sectors, engineers are very short in supply at the moment. So if anybody's at school at the moment and they think about a career when they leave school, engineering, many disciplines in engineering, CAD, design, computer design, these sort of are very short supply at the moment in this country. So there's a massive opportunity for you guys to get your A-levels, go to university, do engineering, and shape the future of this country. But on the robot thing, Ollie, would not be nice to have a robot which would possibly cut the grass and take the dog for a walk and do the ironing and things like that? That would be nice, that would be, wouldn't it? But that would help us a little bit. But I think you're okay. And I think you guys in the audience, on the stream, I think engineering is a way to go forward for girls and boys in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Did that answer your question, Ollie? Are you worried about a robot taking your job? Right, we'll move on to question 3, which comes from Morgan Thompson, Year 9 pupil from Northern High School.
We understand the council has less money to spend, but what can you do to make sure that facilities, including housing, are accessible to young people?
Thank you for that. That goes straight to the heart of it, what your council is for and what it provides for you. Okay, we'll start off with Peter.
Thank you. Thanks, Morgan. I'm taking this, obviously you relate to the council, but I'm taking it from not being a council employee or part of the council. And I think one of the issues is around partnership working and around what people recognise is a need. I think it's interesting that you make reference to housing, and so I will major on that slightly and touch on a bit of other facilities, because I don't think there's been a time in history where there's been anything more challenging for young people around housing and accommodation. And particularly from my line of work, we deal with lots of young people who present themselves as homeless. And we have this little philosophy that generally it's not the homelessness that is an issue, it's generally hopelessness at the moment. And it's about young people having hope and aspiration in what they can achieve and what they can have. I think in terms of housing for yourselves, I think there's two things. One is, how do we prevent you not being able to have a home and a roof under your head? Because I guess one of the big aspirations is for us to have a good job, a safe, secure future, a roof over our head, and enjoyment. Okay? And one of the big issues, particularly with a lot of the sanctions that are coming through and government cuts across the board, is that it's never been a tougher time for young people to be able to have access to affordable housing. And not just affordable housing, but relevant housing that's of good quality and that's of use to them. Saying that, I think it'll come through this morning that there's probably an awful lot going on, and it's just how do we communicate that? So in North Tyneside, I can say for the council that they have really, really good housing advice teams. So if a young person was going to say, okay, where's the facility, where can I go, what can I do? There's really good advice teams that are on hand, and they're based in places like the customer first centres in the libraries, what I used to call a library, but these magnificent new customer first centres. We have strategies coming out our ears about how we prevent homelessness. And there's great work in the borough around multi-agency working. So how do partners get together? How does schools work with voluntary sector? How does the schools work with the council? How do schools work with other people to make it aware for young people? And actually that stretches wider than just North Tyneside. In the whole of the North East, there's a coming together in the North East of thinking about, because it's such a transient thing, you may decide, actually I want to go and live over the river or go and live in Northumberland. There's bigger communication and talking happening in the region. But I think it's really, really important that it is affordable for young people and homelessness is avoided wherever. However, if that isn't avoided, and for whatever reason, and that can be through a multitude of things, whether it's affordable housing or family breakdown, or just the fact that you want to get a small job, and you've got a job but you can't afford the rents that are there, and they've got to present themselves something. And my organisation works with people like the council and other organisations to provide accommodation for young people that is suitable, that is of a very good standard, and that young people could aspire to. See, what we don't want to do is put young people in accommodation that there's nowhere for a route for them to go out of and move on into what I would term your home for life. It's not just always about support, it's about where you feel comfortable as an individual. But I think that's got to go with other facilities. And I think it's the term we would use is holistic. So, you know, it's okay having your house, but how can you access gymnasiums? How can you access really good, affordable leisure facilities? How can you afford other good facilities? At the YMCA, where we've got our homelessness accommodation, we've also got running alongside it a gym, music studio, art studios. So there's avenues, because it's not just about the home under someone's head, it's about training and education and the roots from that as well. So I think, you know, sometimes we just need to stop and look around. There is really, really, really good facilities in the borough, and of course there are challenges ahead. And the challenges, as I said earlier, are massive at the moment, particularly with sanctions and universal credits and those type of things that are coming in. I think the challenge for us is how we communicate what is available for you, and that you have a route to know what is available for you.
Thank you very much, Dean. Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Mo, for that question. I think when most of us were your age, the aim is to leave home and move into our own accommodation, and usually that would be rented property to begin with the aspiration probably to buy our own property later on in life. So the first call would usually be to rent properties either from the council or from private landlords or from third sector providers such as the YM, who have properties for people to use. That is a laudable aim, to have enough properties for people to rent. Unfortunately, that often isn't the case, and we need to build more houses, flats, more accommodation, designed to be used by people who are moving into properties for the first time. And it's all well and good building these housing estates with massive houses on 4 or 5 bedroom houses that cost an earth for people to buy, and ignoring the rental aspect of people needing houses to live in or flats to live in. We do have a system in this country where developers have to provide affordable homes to rent on all developments. But that's a relative term. What's affordable to one person might not be affordable to the next. And I think there has to be a raft of cheaper rentable properties without losing the quality of the property available. It's no good having cheap rents if the quality of housing is poor. We need to try to marry the two together to provide quality housing for young people at affordable rents. The council has a duty to build up its housing stock to enable young people to access housing when they wish to leave home. It's good to see actually that both the last administration and the present administration have moved into building council properties, and it is the way forward. The government has actually tried to help in this instance by making brownfield sites, and without being too technical, brownfield sites are sometimes the most difficult sites to build on because they're old industrial units and they need lots of work done on them to make them safe for people to live on. And this is expensive work, and people are not keen, obviously, to take these sites on, because it's costly. Now, the government's initiative is to look to build on these sites and to provide money to councils to make them safe. And if that's the case, hopefully more and more of these sites will become available for house building. But any of us sitting here who says that we have a magic wand to increase the stock for young people to move into tomorrow would be telling an untruth. It isn't going to change overnight, but there needs to be some long-term planning from whichever side of the political spectrum you're on, because it does come down to politics sometimes. I think it needs to be taken out of politics, and there needs to be a long-term concerted plan. Because if there isn't, what's going to happen is what Dean was talking about trying to avoid is possibly increased homelessness. Greater demand for properties than there is supply of, which puts up the cost of rents, which makes people, young people like yourselves, rent inferior properties, which is what we don't want to happen. And I think really all of us involved should be looking at some sort of concerted effort to provide sufficient, affordable, rentable properties for young people. And I think we also have to get out of our heads, our generation is a home ownership generation. But prior to that, most of us were renting properties. And I think we need to get away from this kind of looking down upon people, for want of a better way of putting it, that it's inferior to kind of rent properties rather than own properties. And we shouldn't look like that. Continental countries don't look like that. The vast majority of properties on the continent are rental properties. And we've gone away from that. We think unless we buy our own home, we're failing as individuals. And I think that is wrong. And I think we've got to change the attitude, and we've got to have an attitude of renting is acceptable, and then build up our stock of rental properties. But it's not going to happen tomorrow, unfortunately. It's going to take years.
Thank you very much. So, Norma Redfearn, what are we doing to provide affordable housing for young people in this borough?
Thank you very much. Well, already we've started to build council houses, which we haven't done in many years. And we have said that we will build at least 3,000, very likely, but 3,000 council houses in the next few years. It's a start. But what I want to say to you, there will have sort of a lot of changes in housing policy coming from government, planning and what have you. So in the next few months, we are developing a new housing strategy actually in the borough. And we're going to do some consultation to identify needs. And I have to tell you that you people will be very, very important to that consultation. And I've got Vicky here and our staff who will certainly take that on board when we're talking here this morning, because we need to know exactly what your concerns are and what your needs are before we start to get planning for that strategy. But what I want to say to you is that within the borough, there are a number of organisations ready to help young people with housing, but as Dean says, perhaps most people, or some people are not aware of that. And I want to congratulate and really thank Dean Pitches, Chief Executive of YMCA, who's doing an absolutely fantastic job helping us to provide the necessary housing we need. Can't do it all, but he is doing some, and giving that fantastic support to some of those homeless young people that are desperately in need of some help to come through that stage and move on to their own property where they can be independent from themselves. And peer supported, I think, is really, as far as I'm concerned. Within the borough, there's Mr. Paul, there's Bernardo, there are other people who are doing exactly what Dean and his staff are doing, but perhaps you're not aware of it. But I still think the council don't do enough, regardless of that. I think that's a really important issue as far as I'm concerned. I think housing, we have over 3,000 people, I think at the present, or could be more, on the housing list waiting for a house. We have lots of young people who need somewhere to be and put their heads down for the night. We give it up to our social service people. That needs to be addressed. So when we're developing this new housing strategy, which is taking place in the next few months, I hope, Vicky, you will help us and do some consultation with the young people. So when we come back and sort of plan and have an action plan what we're going to address, that at least the young people's voices have been heard. And I just want to take this opportunity to say to you that it's your entitlement, it's your right as a citizen of this borough to feel that if you have a need, this council needs to address it. So I'm sure, as I've heard from my colleagues here, that this is high on the agenda. And when we come to talk about the other activities that are important to young people, That's why we sent, well, a number of years ago, we actually introduced a young mayor into the borough, along with the youth council, and we actually employed officers to do that really important job of consulting with young people what their needs are. So we know when we're looking at leisure, when we're looking at summer events, when we're looking at what we can provide for young people, we hear your voices and we try to do our best for you.
Thank you very much. Was that was a very comprehensive answer. How did you feel, Morgan? Did you feel that addressed your question? Fair enough. Right, let's move to question 4. This comes from Harry Proud, who's from John Spence. He's a year 7 pupil. Take it away, Harry.
How can you make sure that residents, young and old, take pride in the borough and look after it for us and future generations?
How can we make sure that we take pride in our borough and look after it for us and for future generations? I'll start with David Ford.
Well, Harry, this question, how it's framed, seems to talk to me about volunteering. I'm glad to see, Harry, that you've stepped up to the plate, first of all, and volunteered and asked this question. So you put yourself forward, taking the first step to volunteering, becoming involved in what happens to your community. So that said, this question to me is about volunteering, becoming involved. As to whether we can make people make sure that people get involved is a difficult question, because that takes away the idea of people being self-motivated. And to me, this is all about motivation and how you tap into that motivation and how that motivation is facilitated and transformed into action. From my experience, and I've been policing for 28 years, motivation comes from 2 areas. First of all, as a reaction to a particular circumstance or event. For example, it might be that there's been vandalism at a particular building, or there's been antisocial behaviour in a particular area, and so the local community feels something must be done. Second motivation often comes from the individual themselves. I think we can all think of somebody that we touch in our lives, whether it's a relative, a friend, a colleague, or a schoolmate, who's just one of those people who just bounces around, gets involved with things, and volunteers, just does things, gets involved. So those are the 2 areas where motivation comes from. Now, what is important within an area is how you actually harness that motivation. It doesn't really matter where it comes from, it's just a matter of converting it into positive action. Now, for me, generally speaking, because I'm involved in neighbourhood policing, so I'm about solving problems that communities have. And I do that jointly with a lot of people. And I can think of some examples, and it's probably best to illustrate what I'm talking about through examples. And I'll pick 1 or 2. Now, we had a spate of incidents, if you like, beside Whitley Bay Metro Station, where there's some land just on the left, some of you may know it, that was vacant, overgrown, and was being occupied by people who were there for purposes that they shouldn't be there. Okay, there was drinks, cans and various other things found in the area, and local residents who live opposite obviously were upset by that. So the police did what the police do, and we got involved, we dealt with the individuals, made sure that they didn't come back. But that doesn't really solve the problem, does it? It just kind of sets it aside for a while, and the space is still there, and it can still be occupied in the future, and the problem might come back. So it doesn't give a long-term solution. So what happened is the local residents who were motivated, and their motivation on this occasion came from this set of circumstances. They were unhappy with people causing antisocial behaviour on their doorstep. How it affected their lives was, particular to them, and it really reduced the quality of life they had. So these residents had the motivation, but they just needed the direction. And that was provided by the police and the local authority, and with the assistance of Nexus. We combined as a team to give guidance to these residents. They were given the land, and given use of the land by Nexus, and the local authority, with the assistance of Cape 40, enabled the local community to get together, form a group, and then turn that area, which was just wasteland, into the station master's garden. And then from that grew a whole band of people, an organisation, who have improved that land. And if any of you know that area, just look over the wall, you can see how it's been vastly improved. And that same group then went on to develop things such as the yoga station, and they've occupied that space within the station, made it a positive area. And that's about civic pride. That's an example of how people can get involved and then go on. And then from that, people from that same project have got involved in the big local, where they've bidded for money from the National Lottery, £1 million to be spent in Whitley Bay. And again, that's all about community being involved, and that's ongoing, and we the police get involved in that. You know, we're in the periphery, but we're there to contribute, but it's all done by local residents. So there is civic pride out there. It's about harnessing it in a positive way. And it goes across all the generations. Now, I think about street pastors, and these work across the whole of North Tyneside, and some of you may well have come across them because they work on the metro system. They work in the nighttime economies of Whitley Bay. And there, they come together, a band of people from across the churches in North Tyneside, and their age span, you talk about young and old. Well, actually, the oldest street pastor is 85, and they're often out at 2 or 3 in the morning, assisting people who might be a bit vulnerable, might have had too much to drink, and make sure that they get home safely. So there's a fantastic example of volunteering. Now, that's about issues. What about the individual? What can the individual do? Okay, well, the individual, you can get involved in all sorts of things. Now, just on the top of my head, I can think about the Tynemouth Volunteer Life Brigade. Fantastic job on the course. They get involved in searches when we have missing people, and a lot of them are young people. Yeah? So people of your age who get involved in an organisation, learn some disciplines, and they go out there and they assist the police. You know, we have a lost child and a lost individual, or we're looking for some property. They're out there, they're helping the police. And these days in particular, that's important. We need to have a wider, you know, support network out there, the community working with the police. There's obviously the Sea Cadets and Scouting, Guides, Air Cadets. There's a whole absolute, you know, remit of things you can get involved in. Now, one actually pertinent to the police is obviously the police cadets, which some of you may not be aware of, or not, but we're actually recruiting at the moment for police cadets. So anybody 14 or 15, you can get involved in volunteering, make a positive contribution. And police cadets do all sorts of things, and they as well as learning skills, which will carry through to adult life, they also contribute to the local community. And half term they're doing various activities, and one of those is actually litter picking in the Marden Quarry, the nature reserve, where people, you know, do drop litter. Perhaps they don't have enough civic pride, but we've got cadets going out, picking up litter, and contributing positively to the local community. So, I hope, Harry, that sort of answers your questions, and thank you for volunteering to ask the question. But, you know, the opportunities are out there for us all to get involved. You have to be motivated to do it.
Thank you very much. It's a very good example there of civic pride. I've seen that at Whitley Bay Metro Station. I'm sure you have too, that new community garden. It's fantastic. Councillor Duff.
Thank you. Harry, the answer to the question is possibly about respect for others and also your upbringing. Obviously, when I was a small boy and being brought up by my parents, if I dropped it out or smashed a window or vandalised somewhere, dropped it out, I would have been asked to pick it up. And if I'd vandalised somewhere, well, I wouldn't like to go home and put that way. So that's the way I was brought up, to respect others and respect other people's property. And I think the borough, which has got a very low crime rate, one of those boroughs in the country for its metropolitan crime rates, David back that up, but the actual figures are. But when I worked for the police service, it was very low. And one of the reasons we said that crime was so low in North Tyneside for was the fact that it's very much a community village, North Tyneside. A lot of people live in the basically the area they were brought up in, so they might move 3 or 4 miles. So the effects of crime is also about you might know somebody, this might be somebody's cousin or somebody's auntie who you burgled or whatever you've done to them. So that's a way of keeping civic pride as well. I think a lot of people live in the borough, come from here, or they come as outsiders into the borough and see all these beauties. Now, as a politician, as a councillor, what I've got to do is make sure that we cut the grass. When residents report that there's been fly tipping or there's been graffiti, like on Sunday, I was in Kilmarnock, which is my ward, and on East Bailey Road, I don't know, there's people from Kilmarnock area. There was a bus stop that had been graffitied and a sign saying East Bailey, so I noticed that straight away. I put that in the council on Sunday afternoon, so I could pick up by an internal email saying this were graffiti removed. So it's because it enhances the civic pride having graffiti removed, and also dog following. You know, if you've got a dog, pick it up afterwards. And so a lot of it, I think, is about respect for it and how you're brought up. And obviously schools play an important part. The message teachers give you. I mean, most schools are community-based and go out and do letter picks and do different things. And then when you get as an adult and you take responsibility, it's a civic responsibility, and you have children or whatever you do in life, if you can carry them values through, it'll help everybody. It helps your neighbours, helps the council, because it costs us less to pick up litter and go special flags in them. So it's basically what your values are in life. And if you want to be civic and have civic pride in this beautiful borough and keep it nice and tidy and make sure it's litter free and not so much graffiti, you know, just carry on where you're going. And there'll be people who are out there who don't have civic pride, and they'll throw litter away and won't pick after the dogs, and the rest of us have to try our best to do that. But I feel a lot of it is respect. Be treated as you like to treat others. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Liv.
Thank you for the question, Harry. I think we have a borough in which we all have a stake, of which we can all be proud. Sometimes we actually don't recognise the fact that we live in a wonderful area. And it's a duty of all our residents to ensure we take care of these assets and pass them on to future generations. There is a need to educate some in the borough to appreciate that what we actually have in North Tyneside, which is, as I've said, is a wonderful natural environment, which is, as Gary's just said, very safe to live in. But this will only remain so if everyone takes responsibility for their actions. As Gary says, everyone has a public duty to look after the borough. Simple things like litter, vandalism, taking care of each other, looking after what we've got. I think actually it's very much in the hands of parents to instill the correct values into their children, and these values should then be reinforced, as I'm sure they are, in school by your teachers. People need to get involved in activities, and they do get involved. An example in Tynemouth is how many people became friends of Northern Park, helped the council develop the outstanding facility we now have, which will be there for us to use, but also for many, many generations to come. And this is just one example of what are many, many examples that go on unheralded in many ways throughout the borough, led by local people taking the initiative, coming to council, coming to ward councillors and asking, can we do this, can we do that? And there are many, many schemes on the go in the borough which are initiated by members of the public. We need to nurture and kind of engender this community pride in the borough. Pride can also be in the achievements of people of the borough, and for people sitting in front of us now, I agree with what the Mayor said. I think an excellent example of pride in our borough is the Young Mayor and the Youth Council, and the recognition that the system in North Tyneside has nationally. It is a model that many parts of the country are looking to take on board. And I think we should be, you actually, not us sitting here, but you, young people, should be extremely proud of that achievement. It will be a legacy that you will leave to this borough and to many other boroughs, I think, in the country. And the final thing I would say on this is that I think if we feel that we have an ownership of something, we tend to look after it better. And that the same principle can be applied to the borough. We have ownership of our natural assets and what's happening in the borough, and we should take care of it.
Thank you very much. There's some good positive examples there. Northumberland Park is a really good example, isn't it? If you've been to Northumberland Park recently, it's had a real makeover. It's fantastic. Right, question 5 comes from Ian, who's a Year 12 pupil from Woodlawn School.
Why is there not more support for young people in dealing with questions about their sexuality?
Why is there not more support for young people in dealing with questions about their sexuality? So, David Ford.
Right, Ian, thank you for the question. Very sensitive area. And I think made more so when you combine it with the many challenges that go with being young. And there's enough going on in your life, examinations, other pressures around you, peer pressures, parental pressures, all those demands. So then to deal with questions, such deep questions, such as sexuality, can cause sort of great individual trauma and distress. And I think people need support and help in dealing with those issues and guidance. Now, it may not be obvious, the police may not be the obvious first agency to go to for help and advice in this area. But let me reassure you that we are equipped to deal with such questions. Individuals come into contact with police in a myriad of ways. I've already mentioned that in terms of mental health. There's a million circumstances in which you might come into contact with the police, and these issues might come to the fore and need to be dealt with at the time. Now, in recognition of this, Northumberland Police have a number of officers who've been specially trained in regard to such issues around sexuality, lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender issues, as it's known, LGBT issues. Now, these officers are specially trained, and they're not only to advise members of the public and assist with questions, but also to assist colleagues, because there's a recognition there may not be the level of knowledge that we require. So those officers are there to answer questions of the individual, member of the public, but also to offer support to colleagues who might be dealing with an individual who has questions, who has issues in their life around these questions. Now, the work that the Northumberland Police has done in this area has actually been recognised by Stonewall, who's an organisation who addresses such issues, who are well established. And Northumberland Police is recognised as one of the top 100 employers in the country in dealing with LGBT issues. So that's a recognition of the work that we've done, but that work's only done so that we can assist the public that we serve. It's not for our benefit, it's for your benefit. Now, I appreciate that an individual might find it very, very difficult to approach a police officer, full stop. I remember back to my childhood, I ran 100 miles if I saw a copper, because I just didn't want to get involved. And I hope that's breaking down, and I've seen that throughout my service from when I started in the Metropolitan Police to where I am now, having served the community in North Tyneside for 15 years. I hope we're a lot more approachable. We're challenged a lot more as well, and that's no bad thing. Now, you may not want to contact us directly, but there are other ways that you can be signposted to facilities, or that you can report matters that might affect you. We've got a reporting system if someone's actually targeted you because of your sexuality. We've got a system of reporting called ARCH, and this is a number of places we've got throughout the borough where you can go in to speak to a third party who's independent of the police to talk about issues. You can also report these issues online. So if you can't get past that, going to see a policeman or someone else, you can report matters via the third party, via the internet. Now, if you have questions and you're not involved in anything that's ongoing and haven't got direct contact with the police, you can actually go and look at a website that Northumberland Police has established called eBeat. And this is tailored for people, young people, throughout the borough, as a resource to answer questions they might have across a whole range of issues, and that includes mental health, sexuality, and crime, and alcohol, and drug abuse, all those things, all those hurdles that everybody's got, to face at some point in their lives, perhaps. And there's advice there and information, but also there's links to other agencies, third-party agencies that can offer you, as an individual, support if you're going through a particular life crisis or just need to know something. So let me reassure that, yes, there is support out there. I know it's a sensitive issue, it's a very difficult issue, But please, rather than go through a crisis yourself and try and deal with it, speak to someone. Doesn't matter who that is, as long as it's a professional, someone who can give you the appropriate advice. And if you don't want to speak directly, then look at those resources online. You're the digital generation. It should be second nature going to the internet, but not almost first nature. Okay, hope that answers your question.
That was very good, Dave. Thank you very much. Dean?
Ian, it's a great question, and had me pondering, really, because I was thinking, well, we're a youth organisation and we deal with young people every day. Why have I got to sit here thinking and not know about it straight away? And I think it comes back to a point that I made earlier. It's about information and communication. It's about people being aware of it. And I had to sit down and really think about it because it didn't come to hand straight away. And I took it in two different approaches. There's a number of agencies and resources out there, but then there's also the information that is required. In North Tyneside, and obviously I'm going to relate it to North Tyneside, there's the one-to-one centre in Shymore that is operated by Northumberland Healthcare Trust, the NHS. And they offer one-to-one advice, I'll come on to it in a bit, for young people. And that's not just about screening and treatment, but it's about advice as well, of one-to-one counselling. And so there's this great facility there, but I don't think enough people know about it. There is organisations like Ask Brooke. I don't know if anyone's come across Ask Brooke, but there's these information and pamphlets there. You can take these away with you afterwards. There's organisations like MESMAC. Have you heard of MESMAC? You any good at catching them? Get Connected is a national website that is very easy to get onto, very discreet, offers free, confidential, multi-issue help and advice. I'm throwing lots of things and I'm going to chat with you afterwards. Of course, we've got connections locally who will signpost and help out. Every school, I used to know them as a school nurse, but it's a public health nurse now, isn't it? Has got a school nurse who should be able to help and deal and signpost. Schools put a lot of amount of time into other things in terms of pastoral workers, mentors and that type of thing. And in terms of the voluntary sector, youth agencies, most youth workers are trained to signpost and help. I mean, specifically, I think in North Tyneside, there's an organisation called the Phoenix Detached Youth Project that have got a specific sexuality project. But all this is all right as long as you know about it. And so I think the key is, how do we get more information to you and how do you know about it more and more? And I think that's a real challenge for all of us sitting in this room. But the other side is relational as well, isn't it? You're not just going to go up and talk to someone off the cuff. It's always going to be about how you create a relationship with that individual. And my advice would be, find someone who you feel comfortable talking with. I know that's easier said than done, but you know, we know that relationships are there. In terms of information, there's a plethora of information. I'll show you these and that and online. My organisation, along with the North Tyneside Council Young Person's Health and Wellbeing Group, that rolls off the tongue, doesn't it, that one? We created a DVD with our Young Health Champions project that was quite simple because we talked with young people and it wasn't necessarily just about not being enough information there. It was how do you know about it? And we created a DVD that showed, and I put it on the desk this morning, walked out without it, so I do apologise, that shows a young person how they may get practically to the one-to-one centre. So, you know, via the metro or on the bus or via walking, how do you get to it? It's okay saying it's there, but how do you get to it? What was really challenging for me thinking about this, and you really prompted something, is that DVD was created for professionals. So school nurses, youth workers, health professionals to take and talk in lessons and sessions. That might not be being done enough. But the second one is, well, really, perhaps it should be produced for the young person to have, so they're aware of it. So it's not just for the professionals as well. So I think there is a multitude of things out there, Ian. I think it's a great question. I think it's a question that challenges us to think a bit more about how we communicate things. I hope I've thrown a bit of thing. I'm happy to chat afterwards.
Thank you, Dean. Rachel is indeed our Public Health Programme Manager. Rachel.
Yeah, thanks Ian. It is a really good question, and I think that David and Dean have sort of covered a lot of what I would say as well. But I think that one of the interesting aspects is sort of around stigma, and I think we need to reduce stigma around sexuality so that young people really do feel comfortable coming forward, and you should be able to talk to your family and friends. You shouldn't be stigmatised. So I think there's a lot of work going on and a lot more that could be done to reduce stigma and make it an environment where people do feel that they can come forward without fear of bullying or being made fun of. So I think that's a key issue. I think that another issue is around information and communicating what services are available, because Public Health just recently commissioned for a lot of new sexual health services into North Tyneside, and all the professionals that work in these sexual health services that are free and confidential, and I think that's the key word, confidentiality. You should be able to come and talk to professionals without fear that someone's going to go back and tell your parents, or I think that's something that young people really need to be aware of, that these services are confidential, so access them, and they should be available on NHS Choices websites, the council website, so you should be able to access them easily. But yeah, I would agree with what my colleagues have said, and for those young people who might need more specialist services, that's really the job of the NHS, and I know that locally our NHS colleagues are working to really look at how we can improve access to specialised services too. So, great question.
Thank you very much. That provided you with a fair amount of information there, Ian. Good. Thanks, nodding. Okay, question 6. This is from Izzy Clary, a Year 9 pupil from Whitby Bay High School.
What is your view on the Northern Powerhouse to make sure we get a good deal for North Tyneside?
Thank you, Izzy. Yes, George Osborne is very fond of this phrase, isn't it? The Northern Powerhouse. So we'll ask some of our panel what their view is on it and how we're going to make sure we get a good deal from the Northern Powerhouse for North Tyneside. We'll start with David Gray.
Right, Izzy, the Northern Powerhouse may not mean anything to some of you in the room. What is it about? Well, it's a government plan to close what is called the North-South gap, to improve the standard of living in the North with better jobs, better infrastructure and better communications. It will be beneficial in North Tyneside as the Northern Powerhouse extends its influence further north and east. At present, the programme is focused in the northwest and Manchester in particular. The recently formed North East Combined Authority, which is a combination of the local authorities in our area, that's Durham, North Tyneside, South Tyneside, Northumberland, Sunderland, Newcastle and Gateshead, all 7 have now got together to form the North East Combined Authority. If their aim is to create jobs and get investment into the area, raise our standards of living, now with the single force working in that direction, we can argue the case for a Northern Powerhouse extending its benefits into our area. This should improve spending on infrastructure, which is transport, roads and rail. It should also provide funding for skills, not just for youngsters 16 to 18-year-old, but also for older people to be retrained. We have capacity in North Tyneside to increase the GDP, that's gross domestic product. What that means is the amount of value we put into the country each year by making things and through our services. And in particular, if our council get the opportunity to control more of their services, both financially and with their decisions, then I'm pretty certain that we can get more of that money that at the moment is spent mainly in the south and the London area. We need to get more of it to the northeast, and it's the combined authority that should be the best platform for us to work from on that.
Thank you very much, David. Councillor Lilly, it's your chancellor that's introduced this idea. Take us through.
Well, this is probably the one political question on the agenda where perhaps I might be the one politician in a minority on this panel. I think this is an excellent project, part of the government's devolution revolution, catchphrase that was introduced by George Osborne. Over the last few years, this government has actually radically improved the country's economy. We have one of the strongest economies in the world, record levels of employment, the lowest rate of unemployment for decades, low inflation and low interest rates. And these are all good for North Tyneside, which is part of the North East region, which has the fastest growing economic activity, the fastest rate of people joining the labour market, and an economy, according to the Times, which is steaming ahead. We just have to look at the investments that have been made in this region. We have Nissan, Hitachi, Rolls-Royce. The Northern Powerhouse is designed to enable this region and North Tyneside as part of the region to take the next steps forward by being part of a larger group which can build on the progress that's already been made. It's a fact that in a modern economy, size matters. With investors looking for a deep pool of human resources, of workers. And it's up to the leaders in this region to catch the ball, as it were, and run with it. The region and North Tyneside will benefit by having one powerful voice when bidding for future investment. With these devolved powers that Northern Powerhouse will have, the region will have powers with associated finance over health, transport, planning, policing, skills and housing. A wide range of areas where people with local knowledge who are best placed to make decisions that are more relevant to local people's lives than central government, they will have powers to make decisions in these areas. When local people grow their local economy, they will keep the rewards for this. And an example of this is the new business rates proposal. Business rates are just the rates that businesses pay on their properties. And council collects these rates and sends them at the moment down to central government. This proposal will allow councils to keep all business rates that they collect rather. It's also vital that our local leaders work together and ask government for whatever powers they feel they need to drive this region forward. And an important part of this will be involving local businesses, local business people, who have a vital role to play in advising these politicians what levers are required to drive our economy forward. The North East region and, by implication, North Tyneside have faced a different challenge than the rest of the country, with the exception of perhaps Cumbria, since 1997, when powers were devolved to Scotland. Now this left us in an unfair situation because with Scotland having these devolved powers, they have the ability to scupper a number of deals and business developments in this region by having powers and the ability to make more attractive offers to business people. By promoting the Northern Powerhouse, the government is actually giving us a chance to redress the balance and to have a level playing field in this area, so we will be able to compete with Scotland, which is only 60 miles up the road. And for a large business relocating 60 miles is nothing. And there are, we could name firms, I'm not going to, we could name firms who were interested in coming to North Tyneside and we lost their business and therefore the employment that they would generate because Scotland had these devolved powers which could offer them more. If we have these devolved powers, the playing field is leveler. It gives us a chance to compete with Scotland. And I believe that as powers are devolved, North Tyneside, as part of a vibrant North East region, can look forward to a very positive future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lilly. Well, Mayor Redfearn, you will obviously be part of the negotiations on Northern Powerhouse, so give us your views.
Well, I just can't let David get away with the fact that we've done so well with this government, having to have 46 £1 million worth of cuts in the last year. In the next 3 years, we have to have 53 to 56 million pounds worth of cuts. So, sorry, David, we have to get exactly. But however, the Northern Powerhouse, as far as I'm concerned, is a fantastic opportunity for the 7 local authorities to work together to actually improve our finances and funding, opportunities to improve our transport, our infrastructure, to attract more businesses to the area, the opportunity to have our money to develop skills and training, the opportunity, actually, as far as I'm concerned, for the people of the North Tyneside, young people, our residents, our young people, to tell us what's important to you. And we as leaders can make sure that we were having these negotiations, you're part of this, and we're actually addressing your needs. Because what it's about is making North Tyneside a better, much better place for the people who live there. I have to tell you that I have been sitting with our ministers during and carrying out these negotiations, and I like the question. I like the question because it says, how would you make sure we get a good deal, right? And that's what's really important, that we get a good deal. That not only we get the best deal we can when we're sitting around the table with the ministers, because at the end of the day, I think the people and the leaders and all the people in North Tyneside know best how to address the needs of these people. How could the people, when you think about it, sitting in an office in London, right, come out with a solution to address some of our problems in the North East? It's absolutely ridiculous, is it not? And probably some of them who are making decisions have never been in your position, have never been in areas where we have to go to, have never tried to sort of do the kind of jobs that we want to train for. So this is an opportunity. But having said that, all I'm going to say to you is that we are entitled to more funding. In the last few years, this government has taken funding away from the North East and give it back down south. So we're entitled to have that funding back here. So we will sit round the table and we will negotiate a deal that is best for the North East. There is one catch though. We would expect that, wouldn't you, to get that? To get this deal to the North East, we have to agree to have an elected mayor. Now, all I'm going to say to you is that there are 7 local authorities involved in this Northern Combined Authority. I am the only elected mayor amongst the 7. All the other 6 are leaders who are elected by the councillors. So you can understand there might be some reluctance with the leaders not to want to have an elected mayor. However, I think they're mature enough and sensible enough to realise if the deal's good enough for the North East, that will review and actually enhance our opportunity to develop things, roads, infrastructure, skills, jobs, what have you, and housing. Why should we take it? So that is the problem. That's the issue we're now addressing. Getting the best deal that we can, where we feel comfortable enough that we can go to the people, that we can go to our councillors and say, this is going to be a fantastic deal for the people of North Tyneside. This is what we can achieve. This is what we probably can address. So yes, I think at the end of the day that if we get everything right, if all the people who have the right to have their voices heard are happy with it, why shouldn't we take this deal? After all, we are appointed to get the best, and you elect us to get the best for the people and the residents and the people of North Tyneside and the area.
Thank you very much, Norma. Very topical question that. Now we've got another topical question from Amy Fraser, who's a Year 10 pupil at George Stephenson High School. Take it away, Amy.
How might the current events of Syrian refugees affect us in our area?
So Amy is asking how might the current events with Syrian refugees, and we've all seen the television pictures of these people migrating out of Syria and into Europe, how might the current events with Syrian refugees affect us here in North Tyneside? Start with Rachel.
That's a really topical question, and I think if North Tyneside does receive Syrian refugees, there's a number of public health considerations that we need to think about. So I'll probably answer this question slightly different to the other panel members. And I'm sure that you have seen on the news that many of them have had really, really difficult and quite traumatic journeys to get to the UK. So while some will be in good health, it's obviously been a difficult and stressful time for many. So I think initially we want to make sure that they get a warm welcome from North Tyneside and they're made to feel at home here. And I know as someone that's recently, I've lived away from North Tyneside for a number of years and recently come back, and I just I'm astounded by the friendliness, and I know that everyone here would step up to the mark and make Syrian refugees feel welcome. We know that many young refugees might have come by themselves, they might be away from their families, so they might be feeling lonely or scared or isolated without their family support. So we'd want to make sure that they have access to all of the services that we have access to. So particularly around health services, we give them support to be able to access doctors and dentists and make sure that their health was as good as it could be. We might need to do some awareness raising and training with some doctors and GPs so that they understand refugees' needs that might be a little bit different to ours. Around particular health issues or maybe the stress that the refugees might have encountered, going back again to the earlier question about mental health. And we might need to do some practical measures, so I guess that you've all had vaccinations and immunisations throughout your school life, but we might need to do catch-up programmes for younger refugees. So I think from a public health perspective, there's lots of things that we need to consider, but I think really the most important thing is thinking, if you were in their shoes, what kind of welcome would you want? And I think it would be that we give support and a real warm welcome to them.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. This is a good question. Very complex question. It's not just easy as we see on the TV. The government have said they will take 20,000 refugees over the next 5 years from camps within the Lebanon and Jordan border, which are both operated by the UN. And so the effects on this border would be little or none, because it'll probably get a handful. So it will be very little effect for the borough. I agree with the government in its part of its policy of containment that the refugees stay within the Lebanese and Jordanian borders under United Nations control. As a country, we are going to be proud that we provide the second biggest aid donor to the camps. I think the USA is the biggest donor. And also, what we should be doing is give great support to Greece, because Greece is a very poor country, and they have a lot of migrants there. And they're a EU member, so that the whole of the EU has to step up, and I don't think they are. Key to this has just been, you've probably seen the news, a suicide bomb, 2 suicide bombs in Turkey in the last couple of days. Turkey holds the power between East and West, always has, between the Western Europe and Eastern Europe, and if Turkey goes into an Islamic State scenario, that would be terrible for the West. So we have to give a lot of support to Turkey as well, financially as well, and I don't think there's a will to do that. The UN has basically been useless, the EU's been useless, the Americans don't want to get involved because it's not part of their strategic aims anymore, even though they do give aid. The whole world has basically failed the Syrian refugees, but Syria is a complex country, as the Middle East is. It's all about tribals. What tribe you're from, if you rule them, you suppress other tribes, you'll be brutal towards them. Life is cheap in the Middle East. If I'm missing tomorrow in the Middle East, no one asks any questions. They wouldn't go to David and say, oh, by the way, we need that investigated, that guy didn't know that. It doesn't happen. So life's cheap, so unfortunately the Syrian people are being used as a football wheel because Russia has now intervened, because Russia is a long-term ally of Syria. That's the reason why they're there. They don't want the president to fall, they want him to stay. And then you've got Iran backing them as well. So there's a multitude of countries in there trying to barter to get power there, and unfortunately the people who live there are the poor ones who are suffering, the ones who are being bombed and gassed. And the world looks away. The world says we don't want to get involved. We don't want involved. We can't have in this country we haven't got any money, we haven't got the housing, we've got no schools, we've got the people on the far right of the political spectrum who say we should have any at all. You get people on the far left who say we should have them all. Germany's taking some, we'll take some. But how we solve this problem is obviously what my grade on stage in the future, with how many people, how many children, how many daughters, how many wives have to be killed, maimed or raped to stop IS, and the other side of each other. I don't know what we're going to do, but it is a shame that we look away. We watch the telly eating our teas and we see that's a shame, and then what do we do about it? We don't hold anyone to account. Nobody's interested in Syria. It's got no needs, hasn't got oil, hasn't got minerals, it's got nothing really we want off them, so we're not interested. So we all probably share a bit of guilt, but I don't know how we would solve that. But it's a great question, Jamie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. As Councillor Bell said, there's probably only a handful of Syrian refugees in the first instance. David Ford.
Amy, the short answer to your question is that I believe that if we were to receive refugees in North Tyneside, consider it would enrich us as a community. It would offer us all within North Tyneside the opportunity to show humanity to those most in need. It will also add to the diversity within North Tyneside. That's a positive thing. Adds to our experience and our outlook on the world. Particularly when you're young, you get experience to different opinions and cultural backgrounds. It can only add to your outlook, your view of the world, and your experience. Now, I take great pride in the how integrated the communities are within North Tyneside. As Rachel mentioned, you come here and you feel actually there's very little tension that we can pick up on. And that's part of my role as a police officer, is to be out in the communities, engaging with the communities, particularly minority communities, and try and pick up, are there any issues that we, the police or the local authority, need to be addressing. And we're always alert. I'm always a welcome guest in two of our mosques. We've got two mosques within North Tyneside. I'm a familiar face, and I spend a lot of time engaging with the communities, making sure that we're not missing anything. Are there hate crimes going on that people don't feel confident to report? Are there any issues? Are there any tensions that we need to deal with? We have to be vigilant as the police, as the local authority around these issues. Now, I spend a lot of time in the mosques and engage with the community over a long time, not just dipping in and out, but I've developed relationships. And those people within the community tell me that they have confidence. They feel safe within North Tyneside. Now, that's not a reflection of my work over local authority. It's about how we, as a community, those who live and work in North Tyneside, treat everybody. No matter what minority we come from, whether it be an ethnic minority, whether it be around mental health issues, around sexuality, any of those life choices. People are felt to be integrated. They feel safe within the community. However, that said, I recognise that incidents do occur. Incidents are reported. And the test of any community, any society, is how they react to those reports. How do they deal with it? Now, Northern Police deal with hate crime, any sort of hate crime, very positively. We make sure that people have the confidence and the ability and the means to report matters. Now, we've already touched upon when we deal with sexuality and mental health matters. There's safe reporting centres, there's ARCH, there's online reporting, there's other reporting systems such as True Vision. So if a community member for any reason feels unable to approach the authorities directly, they can report. We make sure that then filters through us and that we deal positively with the issues. In dealing with the issues, we also need to offer support to the communities, and we're very sensitive to that. We make sure that the person, the individual, the community is always dealt with according to their needs. It's not just about equality, it's about recognising that people might have additional needs and responding proportionate to that. Now, the simple messages, and this goes out in terms of the things we touched on, sexuality, mental health issues, and it's all about hate crime as well. And the simple slogan is, being you is not a crime, but to target you is. And that's the message that Northern Police wants to put out there. No one should suffer because of any of their individual differences. If you do, you report it, we support you.
Thank you very much, David Coy. Some very good, interesting, thought-provoking answers to that question there. Well done, Amy. Right, let's move on to a question from Maggie May, which is a Year 10 pupil from King's Priory.
Lots of us are interested in the regeneration of our coast. How will you contribute to making sure that it is once again a great place to live and grow up?
Thank you, Maggie. Well, obviously the council is doing a lot about regeneration of our coast, so I'll throw this to Norma to start with.
Thank you. And I have to assure you that we are doing a great deal to actually rehabilitate and regenerate the coast. But someone told me, you know, a long, long time ago that you can't please everyone. Please some people some of the time, but there's a lot of the time. Well, it has been a very difficult job trying to get things moving along the coast, right? I just want to say that before I was elected, right, I spent quite a lot of time talking to your parents, probably knocking on doors, asking different groups of people what was important to them in this borough and what they would like to see. And what they would like to see was two things: something done with the coast, something done with Wall's End, and bring life back to Wall's End. And they were very high on the agenda, so we took those on board, right, and we tried to do something about it. One of the things that they said to me, will you get rid of those monstrosities on the seafront and do something with that? Will you please take out and get something done with the dome, right, that's been lying idle for many, many years. We don't like to walk along the seafront with our friends. We're not very proud of it now. It's just deteriorated over the years. What are you going to do about it? So we've taken that on board. Now I have to tell you, despite all, I don't do Facebook and I don't do Twitter, but despite all the abuse that I get on Twitter and Facebook about what we're doing at the coast, I have to tell you, we are determined to make it a place that you can be proud of in things that you can do. So already we've demolished those 3 eyesores, and very shortly you'll see houses being built on the high point. We've demolished the avenue, which was an eyesore as well, and we're doing things with I think it was Whiskey Benham's. We're talking with the owner of Whiskey Benham's. We're putting a new car park next to the dome, where people said we want to more places to park. We're now putting the last bid into the Heritage Lottery Fund to actually finalise the final plans for the dome, and hopefully in November we'll get a positive feedback and we can start early in the year to make the dome the place that we want it to be with all the activities that we're trying to see there. You remember we had the train in the summer, which was very, very popular. We just were testing it, and we got such positive feedback that we're going to try and make that a permanent event every summer season. And this won't only go from the dome just along to the Briar Dean, it will go right along to St Mary's Island and back again. And people from Tynemouth and Cullercoats are now saying, why can't we have it come to us? So that's one of the sort of things that we're looking forward to, because there's a little bend in Cullercoats that would be very difficult to get around, but we're trying to address that as well. We're doing the Central Promenade, and if you're very aware of what was on the papers, remember the saga about the balustrades. You remember that why we were getting rid of the balustrades, because they were 100 years old, blah, blah, blah. Only to find out that they weren't 100 years old, they had been replaced in 1959. And 2 people who had before done the job came and sent letters in to me and said, they're not 100 years old, they were replaced in 1959. So I have been listening to the residents who want them replaced, and we're going to replace the balustrades like for like when they work on the Central Promenade and what's done. We can't continue with the work on the Central Promenade in the summer because of the birds come to migrate there, so we'll have to stop it, but we'll continue next year. In 2016, we'll see that redeveloped and regenerated. We'll now remember the boardwalk, the cafe boardwalk, and that's sort of, we'll have lots of problems with that, I have to tell you. We'll have to get rid of that to get onto the Northern Promenade, because the Northern Promenade, which leads onto the dome, is very unsafe. And the shelters there are in a dangerous situation, so we're going to demolish those and replace them. But we're going to replace them with shelters that are designed, which the residents like, Not what I like, not what anyone like, but what the residents are going to. We're going to think whether they want a little, shall I say, those cabins, you know, on the beaches there, yeah. If they want them, we're going to try and put some there. We're going to have some little outlets for trading along there too. And we've also got a big grant entered now for to regenerate the lighthouse. So all I'm going to say to you, thank you, Maggie, it's a fantastic question because it's given me the opportunity to tell you all the things that are going on the seafront. And I hope, Maggie, when it's open, we're going to invite you to come along and help us open it. Okay? Thank you very much.
A great offer. Okay, Dean.
I think Norma was saying that you can't please everyone, and I'm sure with your boyfriends and your girlfriends, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? It's really what matters to the individual. How many of you, or I'll do it reverse, if you could show a hand, who wasn't born or brought up or has recently come to North Tyneside? You can put your hand up. Okay. So the majority are born and bred, in fact, virtually, I'd say 90%. You can tell from my accent I'm a foreigner as well. And I've got 3 girls, and when they first, well, they didn't want to move up from a beautiful city called Nottingham. But I often threaten to take them back to the city centre of Nottingham when they moan about the things that are going on. I say it is a fantastic, wonderful place to be. And there's an old saying that's ignorance breeds contempt. And without going too far into that, I just think it's an important thing that we remember what we've got on our doorstep and at our disposal. And of course it could always be better, couldn't everything? But we are in a wonderful place. We're in a place where we've heard about today where crime is low, where facilities is great, and things that we take for granted, things like real good fresh air. You know, we take things like that for granted. That is not everywhere in the country. So apart from that, and me on my soapbox, 5 quick things for me. I think there's got to be still more joined up thinking, Maggie. I still think it's not just about what the council do, but it's also about what partners do and how we add value to that. I think it's great that people are being consulted with, but that's an ongoing thing. And you know, people like young people, older people, the whole spectrum should be continue to be consulted. And again, it's not consultation of you ask, you get. It's getting an understanding of what's there. I think we need to create things that are sustainable, not just good ideas. I think there needs to be sustainability there, and that could even include things like renewable energies that, you know, release money to be able to do other things that you can see. And I think we need to put aside personal preferences. I think there's a lot of personal preference out there, and I just think sometimes we've got to say, you know what, not necessarily what I would have wanted, but you know, it looks all right and it's good, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to make the best of it. Sometimes we've got to deal with what we've got. I do want to. I think it's a great question, and I don't think there's ever going to be a right answer, but I do think we have got a wonderful place, and I'd encourage you to get behind whatever's going to go ahead, whether we like it or not. Sometimes we can't do anything about that. We just need to put our all into it.
Thank you very much, Tim. And David Rose. Maggie, that's a tough question for me to answer. My company manufactures soft furnishings, home furnishings, which is cushions, bean bags and furniture. So as we grow, we will create more jobs. But to make our area a better place to live, we're working to reduce the carbon footprint by conserving energy and helping to control climate change. Our factories have installed solar panels to generate our own electricity. We've changed all the lights in the buildings to LED lights, which use 75% less electricity than normal lights. And we've installed furnaces to burn our waste wood and other waste, so that we're heating our factories at no cost and getting rid of waste at the same time. One of our factories actually produces polystyrene bead that you use in bean bags, but it's also used for insulation and cavity wall insulation. As a result, that means houses who install it will be saving on their fuel bills. So our contribution, I guess, to conserve energy is what we're doing to make our area a healthier place to live.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, David. Now, we come to the final question. Did you want to contribute, David? We come to the final question. When you hear it read out and you see it up there, I also want you all to think what your answer might be, because I think once we've heard from the panel, it'd be nice to see what other people think out in the audience then. So, Kaya Starr-Ward-Smith is a Year 9 pupil at Marden High School. Give us your question.
If you had a magic wand and could change one thing about North Tyneside, what would it be?
Right, well, we've all got magic wands on this desk, obviously, so I'll ask the panel from your left to right to answer this question, and then you people in the audience think about it as well, because I'm going to ask for your contributions too. But we'll start off with Councillor Bell at the end there.
Thank you. Well, probably the postcode lottery of health and inequalities within this borough. Some people who live in certain postcodes will live until the 80s and others will live until the 60s. Some will have a very good life and others have a very poor life. So if I was born equal, it would be a nicer world.
Very good. David Rose again.
Very briefly, because you've used the words magic wand in your question, I would simply say to conjure up Mediterranean weather for North Tyneside. But seriously, it would be to see the seafront master plan that the Mayor has outlined completed in record time, from the restoration of the Spanish City Dome right through to the visitor centre that's going to be built at the St Mary's Headland, and bring back those attractions of shops, cafes and entertainment as it was when I was a young boy some 60 years ago.
You're not that old, David. You're not gone. Dean.
Yeah, being a southern softie, I wanted to say weather as well, but I won't. So my one word is poverty. I'd like to be able to change poverty, because that contributes to an awful lot of things. From such things as eating, having a bad diet, all the way through to smoking, alcohol, education, attainment, so forth. The gap in poverty, I'd like to eradicate, and that would be my magic wand.
Excellent. Councillor Lee.
Thanks. I'd take a slightly different tack. I would change our views in the education of our young people. I would increase the awareness and emphasis on the STEM subjects. If you bear with me, I'll get that quickly. I would big up engineering as a profession and a good career choice for both boys and girls, make them more aware of the different routes into the varying types of engineering, university, technical apprenticeships. The reason for this is the average age of an engineer in North Tyneside is over 50. And the change I would make would address this situation, and it would provide the borough with a skill set to take advantage of the opportunities which I hope will be afforded by Northern Powerhouse.
Very good. Norma.
Thank you, Adrian. Wow, fantastic question. This is it now. I think it's really sort of important for you to understand, and I hope you do understand that. When you decide to come into politics, which most of us are, except for Arthur and pretty talented, but there's 3 of us here who are politicians, that you come into politics because you want to make a difference, right? That's the driving force that makes you want to come into politics. And my wish, as elected mayor of North Tyneside, you would agree that I want North Tynes to be a fantastic place to work, live and play. But I also am desperate to make it a place where everyone, regardless of what area they come from, regardless of their postcode or their background, is a place where everyone can reach their full potential. So they have all the supports they need to get the way they're entitled to be. And in order to do this, because this is where the magic wand comes in, right? Is that we don't play party politics. That we start, we all day, to make the best and do the best for North Tyneside. And sometimes when you're playing party politics, it prevents you to getting on that road.
Never thought I'd heard a politician say and see an end to party politics. Rachel, your magic wand.
So I'm obviously sharing a magic wand, I think, with some people on the panel, because mine would be I'd wipe out inequalities so that everyone in North Tyneside has the same chances in life from the day that they're born.
I hope I'm not being rude if I say you can have a magic truncheon.
No,
Right, mine is, my wish, I suppose, it's not actually just an issue in North Tyneside, although it affects North Tyneside. It's actually a national issue, and it's around alcohol and our relationship with alcohol and how it destroys lives. And I think you are a generation, hopefully, that will change in your use of alcohol, your outlook to alcohol, and you will recognise the harm it can cause. Because it does destroy lives. I've seen it over a period of 28 years, how the common theme is often substance abuse, and quite often the most available and the cheapest is alcohol. So just reflect on that yourselves, and obviously the adults should also reflect as well, because alcohol destroys lives. We as a nation, and people in North Tyneside as well, need to change their attitude to alcohol, because it does destroy lives.
Thank you, David. Now, I said at the outset, I wanted you to think about it as well. So, do people out there have thoughts on how they'd like to wave their magic wand? In which case, the lady with the microphone is going to run around the room. So, put your hand up if you know how you'd like to wave your magic wand. Tell us who you are, what school you're from, and what you would do, what your one thing would be.
I'm Matthew Slater, year 7 in Kings Priory, and what I would probably do is I would improve for the entire world, improve the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, so global warming will stop.
Wow, that's quite impressive. That's well beyond North Tyneside. Who else would like to contribute? Back there.
I'm Oscar Daniel and I'm from Modern High School. And if I could wave a magic wand, I would probably let the refugees into Britain, like more of them.
Thank you very much for that. It's very humane. Who else would like to wave their magic wand? Lad on the back row, I want to see. Somebody's a hand up here. Yes?
I'm Chris Sutton, I'm from Valley Gardens and year 8. If I could wave a magic wand, I would create affordable housing for everyone in North Tyneside.
Fantastic, good luck. Right, there's more hands going up. We'll try and get to all of you.
I'm Madison Pierce from Churchill Community College, and if I had a magic wand, I think I'd like for everyone to accept individuality. Because I mean, as you can tell, I'm probably a bit of an individual myself, and you do get judged a lot. And if it's good or bad, but there's a lot of rules in school about how you can't always portray who you are really inside, and sometimes I don't think it's majorly fair. But yeah.
Very good. One from the heart there. Who else?
Hi, I'm Emily House in year 10 at eBay High School. If I had a magic wand, I'd like there to be more opportunities for young people to get involved in the community and volunteer and stuff, just like to help out like the neighbourhood and stuff like that.
Thank you for that. I'm sure the people on the panel have noted that. Got a couple on the back row there. Thank you, microphone ladies. You're running all over the place.
Hi, I'm Robert Wilson from Charles Burns High School, and if I had a magic wand, I would use it to increase the confidence in children to speak their personality. So, like, for instance, if you're being bullied, like most time, the only weakness and the only strength for the bully is that you don't tell anyone. So if we could increase the confidence in people, it would decrease bullying and other things like that.
You showed great confidence there. That was a very good question. As the girl just behind you.
I'm Morgan Thompson, year 9, North High School. I would try and decrease
the amount of drug abuse, because in areas I've lived in North Tyneside, there's been a lot of drug abuse, and I have younger siblings, and sometimes when we're in our house we can just smell the things, and we don't really want the little ones to smell them.
Thank you, Morgan. Second question, another very good question from Morgan.
I'm Morgan Mackinson from Churchill Community College. I'm Morgan Mackinson from Churchill Community College Year 11, and I think I would improve awareness about what you actually need to do in real life, like give people in schools better chances to actually get jobs and have more skills that they actually need. Because I found that that's quite lacking.
Better careers advice?
Yeah.
Well, I hope somebody from Connections is in the room and listening. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Paul Henson, and I'm in year 10 and I'm from Whitley Bay High School. And I think I've got to agree with David Rose here. We've got to really acknowledge the fact that North Tyneside was once a massive tourist attraction, which didn't only bring in tourists from perhaps the country, but maybe from around the world. But now it's just a mere spark which once fueled the flame, which was North Tyneside. And if I could do anything, I would increase the seafront, because it brought in a lot of attraction, which really benefited us and tourists.
Thank you very much. Well, the Mayor assured us that the regeneration plan will give you that seafront. Lots of hands up. We've only got about another 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Amy from George Stevenson High School, and if I had my magic wand, I think it would be to have more things for teenagers, because obviously I have parks for little ones, but you don't really have enough for teenagers, and you get a reputation on you if you don't have enough. So.
What would you like to see, Amy?
I'm not really sure, I don't know. Don't really know if I have any ideas about it, but it would be nice to see some things other than parks, because obviously you see quite a lot of teenagers go around hanging around parks, but it's not exactly a nice view. You would kind of like to see people being safer in a way. That would be my magic wand.
Okay, great. Okay, 3 more magic wands and then we'll have to wind it up.
I'm Harry Farrell from John Spencer in year 7. I would like to add more activities in parks and in beaches and stuff.
Very good. We'll have our hands.
Hi, I'm Ellie Birkin from John Spence High School, and if I could wave my magic wand, I would have it to increase schools so people have more opportunities to be
More opportunity to do what, Amy?
educated.
Fantastic. Well, question, good persistence there. Right, one more.
Hi, I'm Jack from John Stevenson High School, and if I had a magic wand, I would use it to create more chances for young people to get involved with charities and volunteer things.
Fantastic, excellent. What a great selection there. Does anybody feel left out and desperately burning to ask their question? Go on then. There we are. We'll have a bonus question. Wave that magic wand.
I'm Georgia Darn, I'm from Valley Gardens Middle School, and if I could wave my magic wand, I would make sure that young people in North Tyneside would be free from abuse from parents, families, and be able to go into the social services and be guaranteed a place and a better future.
Thank you very much. Very thought-provoking. Thank you very much, everybody. There's some fantastic wand waving going on there. I'm going to draw this to a close. I'm going to thank the panel who've been very helpful with their answers today. Just to remind you, left to right, we have Councillor Gary Bell from Killingworth, David Rose, Chair of the North Tyneside Business Forum, Dean Titterton, who is from the YMCA in North Tyneside, David Lilly, Councillor for Tynemouth Ward, your Mayor, Norma Redfearn, Rachel Nicholson, who is of course the Public Health Programme Manager, and David Foy from Northumbria Police. Thank you very much to all of them. I think they deserve a round of applause.
I'd just like to say a word before that. Sorry, it's all right. You can do your bit in a minute. I just want to thank all organisation. I want to thank the teachers and schools for actually getting the young people involved. So thank the young people, because what I've heard this morning fills me with hope for the future. And I see a lot of future councillors and mayors and there's MPs down there who's going to put the word right for us, so thank you very much. And Adrian, it's always a pleasure and an honour to have you to come to North Tyneside and share this. Thank you very much.
It's my privilege. Thank you.
The third line of thanks. So it is thank you to you for taking part. Also, all the sent questions in, we just couldn't fit them all in. Thanks for all your tweets. It's amazing to see how many people who aren't here who are retweeting them. And it's really what we're trying to do is get the message out so next year it's even bigger. We will be producing a report which will get sent out to all the schools, so it'll have all the answers in, and we will try as much as we possibly can to follow up some of the questions that didn't get asked today and put those answers in the report as well. We will ask you to join us for some refreshments, and hopefully some of the panel members can stay around and you can have a chat with them before you rush off. But there's one thing we wanted to do finally, and I think it's really interesting that throughout this morning, obviously I'm really biased because we look after our young men on this council, so I'm totally biased, and they are amazing young people. But I think a few panel members have talked about volunteering, and a few panel members have talked about how great young people are. And I want to ask a young person to come down here, Oscar, who has been on our children's council, so that's like our youth council but for younger children. He's now on our youth council. He's here, I would say, probably every day this week, part of every democracy event we've got going on. So he's going to help us run tomorrow's event with primary school councils. He is actually a debate lead on Thursday in our youth council debate, and that's when they choose what campaign they're going to run for the next year. So I just want to ask him to come down here a second, because the very final thanks of today does go to Adrian for coming along.
Thank you.
So now just join us for some refreshments, hopefully before you have to rush off.